If you think survival is about war, apocalypse, or the wilderness, then you are looking at the problem the wrong way. Most Americans do not collapse because of bombs. They collapse because the power goes out for a few days. There is no clean water. They cannot go grocery shopping. And everything familiar disappears at the same time. Survival is not about making it through a major disaster. Survival is about not falling apart during small disruptions that drag on. And the things that keep you standing are often the cheapest items you once ignored. 10. Large candles. What keeps people from slipping out of a normal state? When the power goes out, the first thing to disappear is not light, but the familiar rhythm of life. No glowing clocks, no screens, no small signals reminding you that time is still moving steadily. In the darkness, people quickly drift into a suspended state, unsure of what to do next, unsure how long things will last, and it is this uncertainty that causes the mind to collapse first. A large candle that burns steadily does not solve every problem, but it does one extremely important thing. It creates a fixed point in space and time. The light does not flicker, does not suddenly go out, does not force your eyes to strain and constantly adapt. You can see the room clearly, recognize that familiar objects are still in their usual places. See the faces of loved ones not swallowed by darkness. That is when the brain begins to calm down. Panic responses decrease, and the sense that everything is collapsing slows noticeably. A large candle is not just for lighting. It keeps people from slipping out of a normal state. In prolonged emergencies, people do not collapse from hunger first, but from the loss of daily order. Sleep no longer feels like sleep. Meals no longer feel like meals. Day and night blur together. A candle that burns for many hours keeps the evening as evening, keeps meals happening around a source of light, keeps families sitting together instead of each person retreating into a corner of darkness. This light does not give you more food, and it does not give you more water, but it gives you something even more valuable in the early days of a crisis: the ability to keep a clear head and make correct decisions. And in every prolonged crisis, the survivors are not the ones with the most supplies, but the ones who maintain mental order the longest. But once the mind is no longer collapsing because of darkness, the next danger begins to appear far more quietly, coming from water, moisture, and the things that come into direct contact with the body and belongings. 9. Soap and toothpaste, the line that keeps the body from collapsing. When the body begins to lose hygiene, the mind often collapses before a person even realizes what is happening. Not because of pain and not because of hunger, but because of the feeling of slowly slipping out of a normal state. Soap and toothpaste do not make you stronger, but they preserve the feeling that you are still a person living with order, not someone merely enduring chaos. During a prolonged power outage after a major storm, Mark, 52, lived with his wife and 2 children in a damp house on the outskirts of town. Water was limited, daily routines were disrupted, and the entire family focused only on makeshift meals and trying to sleep through the days. The first 2 days passed in silence. By the 3rd day, everyone became irritable and exhausted, almost avoiding conversation with one another. No one was seriously ill. No one was injured. But the atmosphere in the house grew so heavy that everyone felt drained. That evening, Mark boiled what little water remained, divided a small amount of soap for each person, and asked the family to wash their hands, wash their faces, and brush their teeth before eating. It sounded trivial and almost meaningless in such scarcity, but after that meal, something clearly shifted. The family sat together longer, talked more, and the tension eased. Not because the problem had been solved, but because the body was no longer being neglected. Poor hygiene does not only lead to infection and physical decline, it also drags the mind down very quickly. When the mouth is dry, teeth feel dirty, and hands are sticky, the body sends a signal that everything is slipping out of control. Soap and toothpaste block that signal. They preserve small daily habits, keep meals from turning into acts of endurance, and keep people from slowly sliding into resignation. In a crisis, the line between coping and collapse is often very thin. Sometimes it does not lie in food or medicine, but in whether you still have the ability to wash your hands, rinse your mouth, and look at yourself in the mirror without feeling unfamiliar. Soap and toothpaste do not solve the crisis, but they keep the body from collapsing, and that alone is enough to help people hold on much longer. In a prolonged water shortage, what breaks your spirit the fastest? Hunger, fatigue, or the feeling that your body is no longer clean? 8. Thick trash bags. The last line of defense when everything starts getting wet. In a crisis, very few things fall apart as quickly as belongings getting wet. Not because of heavy rain or flooding, but because water seeps into places you do not notice. Damp floors, clothes that never fully dry, backpacks set on the ground, items exposed to moisture for hours on end. Once things start to get damp, everything deteriorates in a chain reaction, from smelly clothes, ruined documents, malfunctioning devices, to food that is no longer safe. Thick trash bags are not meant for throwing things away. They are the final barrier between your belongings and the outside environment. When it rains, they seal a backpack, so contents do not get soaked. When floors are wet or cold, they become a moisture barrier for sitting, lying down, or placing items. When you need to keep clothes clean, they create a clear boundary between what is still usable and what has been contaminated. In cold conditions, thick trash bags also help reduce heat loss by blocking wind and moisture. The greatest value of thick trash bags does not lie in a single specific use, but in their ability to replace many things at once when you no longer have options. They are not attractive, not specialized, but they can become a rain poncho, a ground tarp, a waterproof bag, a container for clean items, or a temporary hygiene barrier. A very cheap item, but without it, you pay the price as your belongings slowly deteriorate with no way to save them. A damp environment does not kill you immediately. It erodes you slowly. Skin irritation, prolonged cold in the hands and feet, dry items disappearing, discomfort building day by day. It is this quiet decline that weakens the body before you realize you are in danger. Thick trash bags do not make life more comfortable, but they keep you from sliding downhill each day because of moisture and dirt. And in a prolonged crisis, avoiding decline is always more important than trying to improve. 7. Paper towels. The final boundary that keeps you human. When water begins to be limited, danger does not arrive loudly. There is no chaos, just small habits slowly disappearing. You wash your hands less. You stop wiping things clean after use. Meals and daily life become more uncomfortable. It is from these very small changes that decline begins. In that situation, paper towels become one of the last remaining civilized items. They cannot replace water, but they help delay the collapse of personal hygiene. Wiping hands before eating reduces the risk of bringing bacteria directly into the body. Wiping skin, living surfaces, and personal items helps prevent the buildup of things the eyes cannot see, but the body feels very clearly after just a few days. When the body remains in a dirty state for an extended period, the consequences do not arrive immediately. They come slowly and quietly. skin irritation, cuts that heal slowly, a growing sense of discomfort. More importantly, the mind begins to decline along with the body. When you no longer feel clean, you also lose the feeling that you are living in a normal state. Paper towels preserve that fragile boundary. They allow you to maintain very basic human actions, eating in a clean way, minimal wiping, keeping the body from slipping into neglect. These things may sound small, but in a prolonged crisis, they are exactly what prevents people from gradually sliding into resignation. Survival is not only about avoiding death. Survival is about not letting the body weaken so quickly that the mind collapses with it. Paper towels do not make you stronger, but they keep you from getting worse each day simply because of a lack of basic hygiene. And in the hardest periods, not sliding backward is already a very large advantage. When basic hygiene becomes a daily struggle, the next factor that determines how long you can hold on lies in what seems most obvious: clean water. In your opinion, when water is scarce, what is harder to maintain? Cleanliness or mental stability? 6. Gloves and knit hats. Retaining heat to retain control. In a crisis, cold does not strike like a heavy blow. It arrives slowly, seeps in, and quietly drains strength bit by bit. Hands begin to stiffen, fingers become harder to move. The head grows cold, and the body burns energy just to stay warm instead of thinking or acting. As body temperature drops, decision-making ability drops with it. And that is when people begin to make mistakes. Gloves and knit hats are two items that are easily overlooked because they are so familiar. But in cold environments, especially when electricity, heating, and fuel are no longer reliable, they become a direct line of defense between the body and exhaustion. Most body heat escapes through the head and hands. When these two areas are not kept warm, the entire body has to work harder just to survive, leading to fatigue, shivering, and loss of focus. During a snowstorm that left a neighborhood without power for several days, Robert, 61, who lived alone in the suburbs, once believed he could tolerate the cold because he was just staying indoors. On the first night, he did not wear a knit hat while sleeping and did not put on gloves while tidying up in the freezing house. By the next morning, he said the most frightening part was not the cold itself, but the feeling of mental sluggishness, trembling hands, and an inability to think clearly. Only after putting on a knit hat and wearing gloves continuously to retain heat did he feel his body stabilize and his mind become clear enough to continue managing the situation. Keeping warm is not about comfort, but about preserving energy. When the body does not have to constantly fight the cold, it has enough strength left for more important tasks such as cooking, cleaning, making repairs, and making correct decisions. Gloves allow you to keep functioning when temperatures are low. Knit hats prevent heat loss from the head. And together, these two items keep the body from slipping into quiet exhaustion. In a crisis, many people do not collapse from lack of food or water, but because the body is slowly worn down by cold and fatigue. Gloves and knit hats do not create a solution, but they keep you warm enough to retain control over yourself. And as long as you can still control your body, you still have a chance to turn the situation around. Engagement question. In a prolonged cold period without electricity, what do you think drains you faster? Hunger or cold? 5. Bottled water. The one thing that cannot be negotiated. Without water, everything stops faster than people expect. You cannot cook, you cannot wash your hands, you cannot take medication properly, and most importantly, you cannot keep a clear head for decisions that require precision. When water disappears, every other plan immediately becomes secondary, because there is no foundation for anything else to continue functioning. Bottled water is not a solution for an entire way of life. It is not meant to sustain you for months or replace a long-term water source. Its real role lies elsewhere. Buying time during the most dangerous phase, when things have just started to break down and you have not yet had a chance to adjust. Just a few bottles of clean water are enough to keep basic daily life from collapsing immediately. Enough to allow you to think, calculate, and look for the next option instead of being pushed into panic. When the body lacks water, the impact does not stop at thirst. Concentration drops noticeably, reflexes slow down, and decisions that once seemed simple become harder to make. A small mistake at this stage can trigger a chain of serious consequences because everything is already in a fragile state. Clean water helps maintain mental clarity, keeping you able to assess the situation instead of reacting on instinct. In a crisis, the person with the advantage is not the one who stockpiles the most, but the one with a larger time buffer. Bottled water is that buffer. It gives you a few days without rushing, a few days without making decisions while exhausted, a few days to keep things from slipping out of control too quickly. Even though brief, this window of time often determines the difference between managing the situation and becoming completely passive. Water does not create solutions, but it keeps all other options alive. And in the most unstable periods, having options at all is already a major advantage. If the water supply were disrupted today, how many days do you think the bottled water in your home would keep you mentally clear? 4. Baking soda. One small container that keeps many things from falling apart. When shortages begin, items that serve only one purpose quickly become useless. In a prolonged crisis, real value does not lie in specialization, but in the ability to carry multiple roles at once. That is why baking soda, a small container of powder often forgotten in the kitchen, becomes a quiet but important item. Baking soda is not just for cooking. When living conditions deteriorate, it steps out of its role as a kitchen ingredient and becomes a tool for maintaining basic hygiene. It helps clean the mouth when toothpaste needs to be rationed, reduce body odor when bathing becomes difficult, and clean household items when there is not enough water or specialized cleaning products. Each use is not about convenience, but about delaying the decline of the body and the living environment. Another less noticed role is supporting digestion when meals become irregular. In a crisis, food is no longer varied, schedules are disrupted, and the body reacts more easily. Small digestive discomforts are not immediately dangerous, but when they persist, they wear down both physical strength and mental resilience. A container of baking soda can help ease these issues, keeping the body from being pushed into a constant state of discomfort. What makes baking soda special is not extraordinary power, but its ability to temporarily replace many other things when options are limited. It is not perfect, but it is good enough for many tasks at once. And in conditions of scarcity, good enough matters more than optimal. One small, inexpensive, unremarkable container can help prevent many aspects of daily life from collapsing at the same time. In a crisis, preventing multiple systems from degrading simultaneously is what ultimately determines how long you can hold on. Right now in your home, is there any multi-purpose item like baking soda that you have never thought about from a survival perspective? 3. Pain relief and allergy medication. What keeps the mind functioning? A crisis does not give you the right to take sick leave. There are no days off, no recovery time, and no one to make decisions for you when the body begins to malfunction. In unstable periods, people rarely collapse from a major illness, but are more often taken down by very small problems that drag on. A persistent headache, an uncomfortable allergic reaction, or an insect bite that leaves the body tired and unfocused. Pain relievers and allergy medication do not make you healthier than normal. Their role is simple but extremely important, keeping you from weakening too early. When a headache drags on, the ability to think clearly drops noticeably. When the body is itchy, swollen, or uncomfortable from allergies, patience and focus are quickly drained. In situations that require precise decisions, even a small decline like this can be enough to lead to the wrong choice. One viewer once left a comment under a survival preparedness video. "I was not seriously injured, just had a constant headache for 2 days from lack of sleep and stress. When it came time to handle a few important things, my mind was completely scrambled. Only after taking pain medication did I realize I had almost made some very bad decisions." This is a very common experience, but one that is often underestimated, because headaches or allergies do not immediately show how dangerous they can become. The frightening part of these problems is not their intensity, but their timing. They often appear exactly when you need to be the most alert, when the surrounding environment is already under heavy pressure. At that point, the body is no longer a tool that supports survival, but becomes a burden if it is not kept under control. Medication in a crisis is not meant to completely cure. It is meant to buy back the ability to function normally for a short but decisive period of time. Enough for you to think more clearly. Enough for you to keep doing what needs to be done. Enough for the brain to remain in control instead of letting pain drive every action. Have you ever made a bad decision simply because of pain or discomfort at a moment when you did not have medication available? 2. Antibiotic ointment and hydrogen peroxide. The silent killers few people notice. In a crisis, people rarely die from major wounds. Serious injuries are usually noticed immediately, treated early, and recognized as dangerous. What kills quietly comes from small cuts that are ignored, minor scrapes that seem insignificant but occur in dirty conditions, when hands are not clean and water is no longer sufficient to maintain normal hygiene. As living conditions deteriorate, the body becomes far more vulnerable. A small cut while cooking, a scrape while cleaning, or an insect scratch can all open the door for bacteria to enter. Infection does not strike immediately. It spreads gradually, silently, and is often only noticed once fever, pain, and overall weakness have already begun. By that point, the options for response are far more limited. Antibiotic ointment and hydrogen peroxide are not loud items. They do not make you feel better instantly, and they do not provide immediate reassurance like water or light. Their value lies in the ability to stop a dangerous chain reaction before it has time to spread. Hydrogen peroxide helps clean a wound at the initial stage when there are no longer adequate conditions for thorough washing, while antibiotic ointment helps prevent bacteria from growing during the period when the body is at its weakest. One viewer once left a comment under a survival video. "During a prolonged power outage, I only got a small scratch on my hand while cleaning. Because I underestimated it, I did not treat it carefully. 3 days later, my hand was swollen and painful to the point that I could not grip anything. Since then, I always keep antibiotic ointment and hydrogen peroxide in my emergency kit." This is not a rare story, but something many people have experienced in a similarly quiet way. The danger of infection does not lie in the initial wound, but in how it weakens the body at exactly the moment when you need to be strong the most. When the body has to fight an infection, all resources are diverted, the mind becomes fatigued, work capacity declines, and poor decisions begin to appear. These two inexpensive items do not create miracles, but they prevent consequences from spreading at a time when you have very few other options. And in a crisis, stopping a small problem from turning into a disaster is often far more important than trying to deal with a disaster after it has already happened. 1. Instant noodles. What keeps the inner fire alive before it nourishes the body? Instant noodles are not a long-term nutritious food, and everyone knows that. But in the first 48 to 72 hours of a crisis, when everything is still chaotic and the mind has not yet adapted, a bowl of hot food carries far more value than the calories it provides. It does not just fill the stomach, it keeps the spirit from collapsing during the most dangerous early days. During a winter power outage, David, 49, once said that what exhausted him the most was not hunger, but the prolonged feeling of cold, dampness, and emptiness. By the evening of the second day, when he managed to cook a few packs of noodles for his family, the steam rising in the dark kitchen slowed everything down. People sat together, talked more, and for the first time in 2 days, no one felt like they were drifting aimlessly. Hot food sends a very important signal to the brain. Daily order has not completely disappeared. When you are still able to eat something hot, the body understands that you still have some control over the situation. Heart rate slows, panic softens, and thinking becomes clearer. Instant noodles fit this phase because they are easy to prepare, require very little water, and create the feeling of a complete meal in just a few minutes. They do not nourish the body for the long term, but they nourish the mind at exactly the right moment. And in the first days of chaos, sometimes a single bowl of hot noodles is enough to keep a person standing long enough to plan what comes next. Not everyone lacks money during a crisis, but many people lack the right kind of preparation. Survival is not found in the most expensive item. It lies in whether you have small, inexpensive things ready at the right moment. A question for you. Among the items just mentioned, which one did you underestimate the most, and now understand why it matters?